06.
06.
What are we doing, Roy?
Well, every week we're changing brakes, man. I don't know how many cars this guy has.
Evidently a couple.
Evidently a few. So we're doing the front brakes on a 2006 Toyota Camry. Today, though, we're going to talk a little bit about safety. Todd suggested safety is the most important thing, so we're going to talk a little bit about safety. When you're working on a car, it's important, obviously, to have a jack so you can jack it up. But you're going to want to look at utilizing some jack stands to keep the car up so that you don't have any problems with it coming down and falling down on you, because that would make for a bad day. And the other thing that's important is some blocks. Now, these are just a couple of blocks that we have laying around that you actually put under the tires so that it goes this way under the tires, on the tires that will continue to contact the ground. In this scenario, we'll be utilizing the back tires to block, to keep the car from rolling forward or backward. We're also setting the e-brake in the car as well to keep it from rolling, but this is just a secondary safety precaution to ensure that the car does not move while it's in the air and possibly falling down. Now, I've had that experience happen when I did have it blocked, had the e-brake on, and had to jack it up in the air on a hill, and I had problems, and the block gave out because the manufacturer that gave it to me, it was in an LR3, a Land Rover LR3, and the car came down on me. Luckily enough, I wasn't underneath it. So you've just always got to be cautious of your surroundings, what's going on, and think ahead what could happen to make sure that you're using all the safety precautions.
So if you don't have this equipment that you have here, what could be an alternative?
A big enough rock, a log that doesn't have sides as far as blocking. Alternatives. One of the things that I have done, that Todd taught me, was when we jack the car up and that wheel comes off, you put that wheel underneath the body part of the car, so that if the car does give way, something does give way and the car comes down, it's being caught by the tire. And so that's something I always use now that I was taught that. And we've done many projects where we didn't have all of this. We used some rocks to block, some bricks to block the tires. We even leave the jack under if we don't have those other things up. So that's what I would use.
All right. Thanks for your help, Roy.
Yep.
Where are we jacking that car up at, Roy?
Well, there's two places I've found. There is some solid body mass underneath, and then there is the point here. There's a metal that's kind of doubled up in the body that's folded over, that's used mainly for the standard jack that comes with the manufacturer. So I'm putting it right under that spot, and if you stick your hand underneath here, you can feel it feels like a little lip that comes down, so you can feel kind of along that lip line. And there's usually a couple of gouges in there to separate, so it comes along and nipples around like that, and you want to basically center this up right here under that section before you start jacking up, which I will do right now. The reason that they put that there is so that you've got reinforcement on the body so that it'll take the weight. Now this, I'm going to look under there for a second to find out where to put this. I don't know where it's going to go yet, but there is always some solid body part, or even where the struts come in. Subframe, thank you. So we're going to look for some subframe right now to set this back down on. Jason, can you give me a little bit more space here? This particular car sits very low to the ground underneath.
Tell me more.
Keep going.
Okay. More?
Yep, keep going. That's good right there. Give me one more.
Cool. Okay, you want to give that?
So this is the subframe that we're going to come up under. This right here is subframe here. There's also this spot right here, which is probably where I think we ought to go, which will be right here. Let's see if I can. Right there, and that's where the strut comes in. Right there, and it's bolted down. It looks like, nope. Is that the strut? No, that's not. That though is part of the subframe there. Yeah. There we go. Now we need to take the hubcap off, and in the hubcap there are some strong points here. You don't ever want to go in between, because as you can see, it'll bend and break. This is where the clips tend to be, and so once you start it, it comes off real easy, just like that. Make sure you set it instead of like that, because you'll scrape it up. Tend to always do in the safety process is just to make sure that the car is stable. So I always just give it a bit of a push to make sure that it is seated right, that there's no problems, because if for some reason things have not made proper contact down there, you don't want this coming down on you when you have any part of your body underneath it. So always give the car some shake, push on it a little bit before you get under it to get any work done.
What if you don't have your trusty assistant with you and you got to break those nuts loose?
Which trusty assistant?
Well, if you're alone.
Oh, I'll take this like this and I'll stand on it to try to break it loose and give me a little bit more.
While the wheel's on the ground?
Yeah, while the wheel's on the ground. I don't jack it up before.
Alright.
That assistant, I understand what you mean now. Yeah, I always break them loose on the ground if I don't have somebody to help me, but in an effort to get this done, because we're losing daylight, we're in a bit of a speed. Our fabulous lighting guys with us, so if we do lose the daylight, we should be good. So Jason, would you turn the wheel this way? Yep, perfect. Keep coming.
Wait a second. I need to take my foot off.
Yep.
Okay, take my foot off the brake.
Yep.
Okay.
Keep cranking it around all the way. Okay.
She's all there.
Perfect. In this situation, we're doing rotors and pads, and so we're going to be disassembling the whole thing. Normally, what would be recommended is to take the bottom, if you're just doing pads only, take this one off, and you can slide this all the way up and disassemble the pads inside and then put it back together and come down. Makes for a very fast brake job, and you're not fighting the caliper as it sits, as it hangs there. So in this scenario, we're going to be taking these off, as well as this, which is the entire caliper, so that we can remove the rotor and replace the rotor. We'll be doing that on both sides.
Okay, you're running.
Okay. This being a Toyota, this smaller is 14, the larger is a 17. We'll start with the 14 and get this done.
She close the door and on. You want me to turn that wheel back out there?
No. go in between that front pad and the rotor. Move the hook out. Probably good. You just got to have enough to be able to slip it off the pads. Just hang it around the back side there and just let it hang on its own. Gently, yeah.
There we go.
So 11/16 is going to be the same as a 17.
And the breaker bar, there we go. So that was still not enough leverage, so we're going to use the breaker bar here. 11/16, as Todd just said.
There you go. Set it on the floor, right on the tools.
Jason, would you grab the brake pads?
Flex against that bumper.
Bring them over here. Thank you. Okay. And that. So, something very important to do is to check to make sure you've got the right calipers before you put it back together and find out you don't have the right calipers.
Rotors.
Excuse me. Thank you, Todd, the rotors.
I do it all the time too.
So in looking at this, what we're looking at is distance to make sure that they're basically the same height and that they're basically the same width. These appear to be the correct ones. Sometimes the guy pulling the parts at the parts store will make a mistake and hand you the wrong one right now because of the time they're closed. So before we get any further, we just want to make sure that that's the right part. Can you find a rag, Jason?
Set it on there, on top of there, just so you check the circumference. There you go, that's right.
That's right. You got a rag? Perfect.
You want anti-seize?
We can. I didn't have any problem with this one. But
Okay.
yeah, if you've got some anti-seize. Just to give me a...
Okay, hold up.
Give me just a baby shot of that anti-seize. We're going to rub it right in here, in this area all the way around. You want to make sure you're not overdoing it like most people do when they first get started doing this stuff. They just overdo it. All you're trying to do is create a surface here so that you don't have any rusting, because it'll actually rust and adhere to this piece, and it is heck to get off. If you've seen any of the other videos that we've done, we had to beat the bejeebers out of it just to get it to break free. Okay, brake cleaner. So usually when they pack these up, they'll put a film of oil on it to keep it from rusting. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to use a little bit of brake cleaner and clean these up so that we get good contact with the brake pads when we put it back together and it starts to be used. One issue you can run into if you get the grease into the brake pads is you can glaze those brake pads and then they don't function properly. And you don't need a whole lot of this either. I just tend to apply it to the rag here and then just clean the surface to get that oil off. And I'll do that on the front and the back. Next, we want to take a look at the brake pads and make sure we got the right brake pads from the shop. They're from the parts store when we bought it. They look to be the same, except as you'll see, there's a whole lot more pad here. This was pretty worn down. Do you remember the size of this one, Todd?
Yeah, it's about 6/32, about 40 to 50%
Used, right?
used.
Yep.
What kind of brakes are we using there, buddy?
Well, funny you should ask there, Todd. We actually really like Napa. Napa's got some great parts. And we tend to go with the premium. So if you're ever on their site looking, and what you'll want to look for in their part number is an SS series, because that tends to be their premier series. Well, not doesn't tend to be. It is their premier series. And so this premium product, we've had nothing but great success with it. We always recommend Napa, and they sell a bunch of different types of parts, but Napa's the way we go. You have any comments there, Todd? You've been working with Napa for a long time.
How you doing? Good.
So what we're going to do here is we're going to put these bracket. They have a bracket that comes here on this, and we'll replace these brackets every time. These brackets just hold the brakes in so that they don't vibrate, they don't move around. So we're just going to go ahead and replace those. Some cars it's real easy to get these out. Other cars you have to use a screwdriver to pry it out. And they just clip right in. You can see there's a guide here. They have these guides, and as you look at it, when you put it in, it's got these little ears. Here, let me put it this way. They've got little ears on the insides here. When you push down, they use force to press against it, and that's what allows them to flop into place and to hold. Be careful though, pushing on this, you'll slice a finger open. I've done it a few times. It's not fun. Now I'm cranking down on this quite a bit, but I'm not going to completely tighten it. I'm actually going to leave a little bit of a space in between it. I don't want to tighten this up until I've got the other one in, because you could lock yourself out not being able to put the rest of that together properly. So you'll see that this is still moving around. Then we'll put the next bolt in. After that you can crank down. Now, as you can see, this is moving around. This plate just rides against here, and what really holds that on is when you put the tire back on and you put the lug nuts in. That's what presses it up against there, and we'll talk about that here in a minute on some of the best practices to put that in together so that you don't have any issues. Sometimes you can get that to not seat quite properly, and if it doesn't seat properly, you'll have issues. Now you'll notice we had to break this with a breaker bar. That could be done, required for a couple of reasons. It could be weathering, but in this scenario it looks like somebody who had done these brakes previously really cranked down on there with a pretty big gun. You don't have to put too much pressure, but you just want to make sure it's pretty snug. But as Todd always says, don't overdo it. when putting it in the front side, you're not going to be able to get in here because this bar is here. So you want to make sure that you set it in this way and get this started on these two edges, and then it should just slip right in. And then next we'll put the rest of the caliper back together. Now this here has a lip on this rubber. If you've done it the way that I have, where you pull this out, you'll want to make sure that you get that seated back up to keep the weather out of this shaft. Now they've got other tools that you can use to depress these if you're in a pinch like us. Then a pair of channel locks works great. It's always recommended to open the valve on this so that you don't push any debris back up into the system. But this is a friends and family deal, and being friends and family, we trust ourselves. Did you get those lug nuts up? I always try to use my feet because I've got a lot more strength in my legs to keep things in place, but as you push this on, you'll want to make sure that you've got it on straight, that it's not sagging one side to the next, because that plate behind, that rotor behind, will come out and fall out in with the pressure on it in the bottom, and that's where things can go wrong. You can end up tightening this one too tight and this one not loose enough, and then you've got problems all over the place. So I usually push this all the way on as much as I can, and then start getting these tightened up. And we'll finish tightening it up when it's on the ground.
Action.
Jason, can I get you to step on the brakes in here there, buddy? Okay, we're good.
Let me turn the wheel it off.
Yes, please, turn it this way. And then I need a 14 socket and ratchet. That's good.
Just turn it
That's
off.
fine.
Screwdriver. breaker bar with the same pair 11/16 on it there if you want.
Let me check it. We-
Now really when you tighten those down, it should be in the vicinity of about 80 to 100 foot-pounds.
Not 300 like it just felt like. Rag. I'll clean it first this time. I need a shot of cleaner. Okay, big shot of that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Need any more cleaner?
Nope. If you're having problems getting your brake pads in after you've put this back on, usually it's a clip that's not properly seated all the way down. These clips tend to want to fight being seated all the way down because of the way that they've been made to put pressure on the pads to keep them from vibrating. And so if you end up running into a problem with this going in, usually it's the clips. This goes in here. A little with that sleeve like that. Sometimes you have to wiggle it around and work it in. Most of the time it should go fairly easily, and then you just put this rubber sleeve back up over to keep the weathering out. Like that. Wheels on my bucket don't go very well.
Need to upgrade to a Napa bucket.
You gotta upgrade to a Napa bucket. That's funny. One with wheels on it. This wheel seats really well on this particular car. Depending upon the size of the wheel and the rims and so forth, sometimes you'll fight it a little bit. Something I like to do whenever I'm putting them back on. This one I don't seem to have that problem with, but if you do, what I like to do once I've got these back on is I like to rock the wheel around just to make sure that we don't have any seating problems at all. That feels good. Okay, we're ready to come down with it now. So what we'll do is we'll get the jack back underneath it. We'll jack it up and set down the jack stands, and then we'll be ready to retighten the wheels, put the caps back on, and take it for a test spin. Now, on that jack stand, there's a little black lever. If you hit that, the whole thing will fall, and you're able to pull it out. Good? Good. Coming down. We're still in the air because of the other side. So I'm going to take that one down real quick, and we'll get right back to you.
Alright, it's clear. You got it?
Okay, go ahead and roll. Now that we've got both sides down, we're going to go ahead and tighten this up. Now you don't have to over torque these. You don't have to put a ton of pressure on them. But it is important to make sure that they're snug. And most people should know, and if you don't know, you do it in a star pattern so that you're offset all the time to make sure that you're getting even balance in the tightening. So we'll start at the bottom here. Then you want to line this up with your valve stem. These are always made with a little divot, or usually made with a little divot. You'll just want to make sure you get it properly so that you're not pinching your valve stem, because you could wear a hole in the side of your valve stem and end up with a flat tire. So, aside from the heat today and this evening, as you can see all over my face, that's pretty much how you do a brake job on a 2006 Toyota Camry. Oh, by the way, guys, now when you're doing a brake job, when we compressed those calipers down to get those brake pads in and be able to move that around so that we could get the brake job done, we pushed all of that hydraulic fluid up out of the caliper back into the master cylinder. And the problem with that is you don't have brakes now because that fluid's not back down in the calipers compressing that brake pad against that I'm drawing a blank, the rotor, thank you. So the one thing you'll want to remember to do before you get in the car and go anywhere, even if it's just pulling it out of the garage, is you want to pump those brakes until you've got pressure again. So just pump it dry on the pedal until you got pressure, then you can turn your car on and go. Well, so that sums up basically what we were doing on the 2006 Toyota Camry. Something I'd like to highlight and point out, guys, is that safety is paramount. It's more important than anything else. So remember to use a jack, a floor jack if possible. Jack stands always if possible. You can get them at Napa. You can get them, at your local stores. But again, my preference is Napa because the quality's there. Which leads me to the next topic, which is quality. Now, a lot of times people are afraid to do jobs on their own because they're concerned that the quality is going to be better if they take it to a shop, which is usually 180 degrees, and here's why. When you've got a mechanic working on your stuff at a shop, he has time limits. He's supposed to have it done in a certain amount of time, which means he's in a hurry, and sometimes they'll forget. You do have good shops around. You've also got shops that are in a hurry. So when you're working on your own stuff, you tend to be more careful, more cautious, and you take your time to do it right. And so if you have concerns about doing it yourself, don't be afraid to try. As long as you put safety first and you follow the steps that we did today on this Camry, you should be able to do a brake job fairly easily on your own. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope that you like what we're doing. We need subscribers, so please subscribe, like, and share. Okay, till next time, guys. Thanks. Appreciate it.